Delegating trial work may sound risky, but it could be the key to scaling your law firm. Welcome to the Lawyer Millionaire, where we help ambitious law firm owners expand their businesses, maximize their profits, and grow their wealth. Are you still handling everything yourself, from managing the business to leading in the courtroom? It's tough to scale without letting go of control. Today, we'll dive into how you can delegate without sacrificing quality and grow your firm efficiently. Today's guest is Jon Groth, owner of Groth Law Firm. With a team of 30, Jon has used EOS to successfully delegate trial skills and scale his law firm. And he's here to share with you how you can do the same. All right, Jon. So you've grown Groth Law Firm from a solo practice to a 30-person operation, including a unique vaccine division, which I think is really cool. What was the single biggest challenge that you were facing? I know there were probably lots of challenges you were facing, but if you had to pick one big challenge as you scaled, and how did EOS help you address that challenge?
That is a great question. The single biggest, there's so many challenges. I don't know if I can say the biggest, but certainly I think as it relates to EOS, the it's it's the rocks. It's making sure you're making progress, and
Mm,
that's EOS that you can have your meeting. Well, we have our meeting, rain or shine, if I'm not in the office or not. Every Monday we have a meeting. It's an hour and a half meeting that we can track what the progress is to climb that next rock. I was telling our team yesterday, we're trying to implement EOS for every single team in the office. So for our intake, our vaccine, our attorneys and case managers, paralegals, marketing, all that. And I was saying, you have to imagine that you're climbing this, rock, a mountain, really, like a rock climbing adventure. And if you don't have your rocks, well, then you're just stuck. So you
mm,
make sure you have your rocks, so then you can find the next rock and then make that progress. And that's really it. Is spinning your wheels is a problem. My
mm.
saying that
Yeah.
I pay too much is uncertainty leads to inactivity.
Ooh, I
And
love that.
yeah,
Yes.
I know,
Uncertainty
huh?
leads to inactivity. That's
And
great.
um, I don't know if it was Gary V or somebody else that I was listening to us talking about, it's okay to mess up. If you at least make that progress, you might only succeed 80% of the time, but great. At least it's made something. You've advanced that much
Yeah.
further, and that's something that it took me a while to understand, but thankfully we're at that point where we are able to make progress, and hopefully we'll look back at this and say that this was the tipping point, and it's consistent change, and the consistency is what helps us to scale and grow.
Yeah. I would have said the same exact thing. I think you really nailed it. The rocks, getting stuff done, because there's so many things on our to-do list, so many things we know we need to do to move the organization forward. But EOS just gives you that discipline of execution, relentless. And we've talked about that on this show, relentless execution, getting it actually accomplished.
Yeah. Well, and in the past, and this is a real, maybe it's a physiological deal with me. Sundays, I just didn't like Sundays because
Okay.
Sundays meant Mondays were coming, and we're
Mm.
gonna have, what's that movie, Office Space? Somebody's got a case of the Mondays, and that's what I had, a case of the Mondays, but it was happening early on Sundays because I didn't like the chaos that I was gonna uh, open the door to on Monday morning. And now it's the exact opposite. Now I really can't wait for those EOS meetings on Mondays. And I wish
Yeah.
we could just jump right in. We have them at 10 so people can have their other huddles and such. But man, I look forward to that so we can then plan the week and then really get an understanding of how last week was and what's going to happen this week. I really do enjoy it.
That's awesome. For those who aren't familiar, can you just tell us a little bit about what EOS is, the Entrepreneurial Operating System?
Yeah, it's really simply, I guess, that is where you're tracking what you have done, what you should do, and prioritizing which person or the best butts should be in the which seats, which person should be in which seat and what responsibilities does that person have, but then ultimately tracking those responsibilities and keeping everyone honest as to what they should be doing that given day, that given week, that given month, and then 30, 60, 90-day kind of day cycles. We work on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly kind of cycle, so we can track and understand, are we making progress? And it's to boil it down to a manner in which you can track your progress and keep everybody honest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've heard a lot of law firm owners say similar things, about the chaos and trying to get things organized. And it can be so easy when you're trying to grow, losing track of direction, getting buried in the day to day. When you started, can you tell us a little bit about how EOS impacted growth for you? Were you able to actually see a change in your trajectory once you started implementing this?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is the boy, can we see a trajectory directly related to EOS? I think what I'm seeing is the results behind our growth, that I can see, okay, we didn't meet that goal. Why? What's on our to-do list? How are we changing that? And then, okay, we made the change. Now we see the results from that. Um, I don't know if there's a direct correlation between, well, boy, now that you say that, is there a direct correlation? Because we're tracking our numbers and
Yeah,
we certainly are
sure.
um, analyzing how we're getting cases in. For example, we know where the pain points are on a on an organization-wide scale. So
Hmm.
I understand that better now because of EOS. We know where cases are coming in and what our cost per assigned case is better because we're tracking it more frequently and consistently. We certainly understand the um, the marketing aspect of how we're acquiring cases, how people are finding us.
Yeah.
That's better, and it also is too honest as it relates to things that we're not good at. There are certain things that expectations that we have of team members in the office, and not being able to um, help people achieve their goals is a concern. Uh, just simply, for example, if people want to get, or if team members want 5 reviews per week, and we see it's consistently only 1 review per week or 2 reviews per week, we can see, okay, what's going on? How
Hmm.
is that? How are we bad at providing that help to our team so they can succeed? And that's something that I still haven't found some answers to how we're failing our team members, but at least we're trying to help them succeed. Um, and yeah, and that I think directly relates to EOS, because in the
Yeah.
past, years ago, we would look at, okay, we didn't meet our goals. Why? And then you are trying to figure out, okay, in the past 6 months, well, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? But you really don't have that day-to-day understanding, week-to-week understanding of where um, the slip up may have been. If you're looking back, hindsight is not always 2020.
All right, John. So let's get into maybe some specifics about the EOS process and how you use some of those things. So we have like the vision traction organizer, the scorecards, the accountability charts. Um, let's start with one of them, like the vision traction organizer. How do you use that in your day-to-day operations, and how does it help you?
Boy, so that's a better question, and I'll be honest with you, that's a better question for our director of operations. So
Okay.
she
Yeah.
uses that um, uh, to look at what our vision is and what we're going to be doing for the next 6 months to a year and such. That's I wish I had a better answer than I would defer to my director of operations for that
And you're
answer.
doing it right because you've got someone who's managing the process for you.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's awesome. Maybe you can just give us you mentioned the weekly meetings that you
yeah.
do. Tell us a little bit more about the process of how you implement the EOS system. What are some other things that you're doing um, in bringing that to life?
Yeah. Well, and I can talk about the scorecards and such
Yeah, let's talk
too.
about
I mean,
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So as relates to scorecards, we keep our I call them key performance indicators. They could be key results indicators. Our tracking system for each person in the office. So each team member, we look at not only not really what they will do for the bottom line, but what actions they can do that will ultimately result in our bottom line being better, right? So, in the past, we used to look at our team and say, okay, attorneys, you should bring X number of dollars in per month, or paralegals, you should bring in Y number of dollars of fees in per month. But that didn't help because we could settle one case that would mean they brought in all that money, from one simple
Yeah.
case. But there are, and people may have taken advantage of that, saying, I'm just going to work on the big case, and they forget about the other cases. So then it's with EOS, we're looking at how do we look at actions and things that action steps that our team can take that will result in money coming in the door for our clients and then at the same time for us. So, is it calls to clients? Is it
Mm.
calls to doctors? Is it getting medical records in within a certain period of time that ultimately demands out? Calling on insurance companies, did you receive a demand? Just those steps that we know, if those are accomplished, then the obvious thing will happen is that the insurance company will offer us compensation, for our client, and then that's when we get paid. So it was more of an action matter, as
Mm.
opposed to a dollar amount concern. So that's really what helps us on a week-to-week and month-to-month basis to keep track of those scorecards of, are you calling your clients, being in contact with clients every 21 days? Are you being proactive in the contact with clients? Are you being proactive with trying to get medical records, for example? And on the vaccine practice, after um, a result is accomplished, then we have a certain number of days, like months, to request our fees. Well, are we waiting till 6 months goes by to request our fees, or are we doing that in a more timely fashion? So are we being more proactive? And what steps can we take to make sure that we're doing things that will result in money in the bank for us? So that's really what the scorecards at EOS has helped us to understand, is the difference really between I guess concentrating on money in the bank versus steps that get money in the bank.
Yeah, I love that. Not just the end result, but then what are the things that get us that end result? So when we go through the business planning process with clients, it's like reverse engineering. It's like, okay, we
Hmm.
want X. So what are the steps that lead there? Okay, then let's make those our KPIs, the things we're tracking. And you're tracking these things then on a weekly basis, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then that goes back to our EOS weekly meeting where we have, and I'm just looking at our last agenda here, where we have our weekly scorecard, we have our rock reviews, and then we have headlines, customer employee headlines, and then to-do list from the previous week. Did everybody get their to-dos done? And then the majority of our meeting is um, the IDS, the what issue, discuss, solve,
Hmm.
where we're trying to figure out what can we do to look at any problems that we identified earlier in the meeting and resolve those. And that we spend an hour potentially every week just going over that information. So we can hopefully create another to-do list that will help us the next week to move on. So again, creating those rocks so we can climb that mountain and make some progress.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the challenges of personal injury firms all over, and because you mentioned cash flow, money in the bank is cash
Hmm.
flow, right? Because of the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows. Um, how have you been able to manage that cash flow cycle better? Has EOS helped you with that, or what strategies have helped you?
Yeah, I think certainly EOS, and there may be other strategies out there that relate to um, consistent action. The problem with personal injury law is you may have a um, big case that's in suit that you're spending all your time because you got to get this stuff done, and then you forget that, well, if I do three other things on these other cases, that might move those carts down the line. So in 2 weeks, you'll be able to get compensation for your clients on those cases. If you get stuck on one thing, you may forget about other things that are not going to help you today, but they're going to help you in a couple or 2, 3, 4 weeks or months. So it's a matter of really being organized in how you're handling your pipeline of cases, to put it more, I guess, a business kind of fashion, a pipeline of cases, so you understand the maturity of cases and you understand the efficiency of getting cases from the beginning to the end. You know, I a long time ago, when I was a first personal injury attorney, I thought, well, it's uh, whatever it'll take to get the most money in the client's pocket. If that's going to mean 3 years from now, and we'll wait for them to get done treating, or maybe the doctor, wants to do more for them next year, 2 years, or whatever. Um, I had that mindset that I'm not going to get involved in that whatsoever. That's up to them and their doctor. I'm taking a different stance now, and I have these past number of years, because I had kind of an eye-opening experience. I talked to lawyers in different states that have a 1 year statute of limitations. This is important because in Wisconsin we have a
Hmm.
3 year statute of limitations. So we have 3 years to work a case up, and then you put it
Okay.
into suit. So a client can be going to a doctor and getting lots of different care in 3 years. You put it into suit, and then you may have a resolution, but you have enough time to kind of wait and see what happens. Other states, you don't have that time. You only have 1 year. So they have to
Wow.
get their doctors on board, get permanency reports, get reports, have doctors work with lawyers to have this legalese created to say, to a reasonable degree of medical probability, this client's going to need X, Y, and Z in the future. And they get a good result for their client in a lot faster time, a time span. So once I saw that, it's like, oh, well, this can happen, right? Why can't we do that here? You're probably going to get a better result for your client because your client's going to get money in their pocket faster.
Hmm.
They're going to be happier, and there's other strategies you can use, so you avoid the additional costs of putting the case into suit, because those costs come from the client's pocket. So there's different things that I really understood, that if you change your mindset and look at how other attorneys are doing it in other states, have their systems set up, we can use those things for us. And that goes back to EOS and making sure that you have your ducks in a row, that if you work from day one to get the best resolution for your client in the fastest time possible, um, that's the best for the client. And that might be working with doctors to get reports as soon as they feel comfortable. It might be working with clients to get diagnostic imaging sooner rather than later, and working against health insurance, because health insurance wants to try to spend as little money on getting clients better. They want to rather have you go and see your primary care doctor once or twice over the next 6 months, as opposed to getting acute treatment, because acute treatment's expensive and health insurance does not like expenses. So you're
Yeah.
working with, or working against all these different insurance companies, which I think is a different mindset for me. It's us versus the world versus us aligned with certain parties. It's really my client and me versus their health insurance, the car insurance, the at-fault insurance, their MedPay insurance, all that stuff.
Great, great. I mean,
Sorry,
yeah,
that was I
that
went down the rabbit hole for a second there, but yeah,
no,
interesting
some
things.
some good things to think about for other personal injury practices. I want you to give you an opportunity to tell a little bit about your personal story and how you
hmm
tell us about the initial days of starting your practice to where you got now. I know this is going to be the Reader's Digest version, but
hmm
for our
Boy,
audience, tell us a little bit about your journey.
I started this March 1st, 2010. So we're 14 years old, I guess. We're a teenager.
Okay.
Um, and my first day, I believe I was in my basement. My dog was running overhead. I had a big um, lab who was big and was certainly, you could hear her running overhead. And two kids who were young. I had at that point a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old who were running overhead. And I was trying to stay professional and make it sound like I was really a law firm. And my business plan at that point was to be a trial lawyer for any lawyer in the state. So my goal was to handle a very small number of cases, and I would um, be called upon at any given time. I would walk in and give me the file. I'll handle the case as if I'm, your of counsel trial lawyer, so you don't lose the relationship with that client. I would just be the person that would come in and try the case in front of a jury, so you wouldn't have to dedicate all that time being the trial lawyer. Um,
Hmm.
and that didn't work out because I was too successful, I guess. And I didn't just have 30 cases, then I had 60, and then I had 100, and then it's like, oh
Uh,
gosh, I can't do this by myself. So I had to hire
right.
staff, and then my overhead was more. And then, well, now I need a real office. I can't go in the basement, so I had to figure that out. And then it went from 100 to 200 to more and more and more cases that I was helping people with. And I guess the rest is history. And we moved from locations to locations and bought some buildings. And now that's where we are. 14 years from now, we're in a location here in Brookfield, Wisconsin. And we had a meeting this morning about whether we're bursting at the seams here. So what do we have to do? Do we move to a different building? Do we go undergo construction? Those
Yeah.
things. That's just the next stage of life. I guess Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. So if you're not growing, you're dying, or whatever the saying would be. But
Yeah.
um, that's kind of our thought process: is what do we do next? Because
Mhm.
there's a lot that we need to plan for in the future, and we got to start today, because
Yeah.
we're hiring 2 new people in the next couple. Well, sorry, 3 new people in the next couple weeks. So, and they're going to be in persons. So that's computers, space, chairs, all that kind of stuff, which is something that I didn't expect 14 years ago, that I would be capable of
Right.
saying we're going to hire 3 people in a matter of a few weeks.
That's
You know,
awesome. I really
yeah.
love that, and I can relate, starting out as a one-man show for sure, and in a 14-year span, I mean, that's a pretty short time frame. You've had some really incredible growth, along that way, so I'm curious, today, are you still involved in the courtroom side of things, trying cases, or how has your role evolved over time?
Yeah, boy. Um, I have not tried a case for a few years, um, and I can tell you the last case that one of my attorneys tried, I had to excuse myself from the courtroom because I was physically antsy. I was, uh, you know, thinking of questions that should have been asked and
Uh,
mannerisms of how you should present yourself. And I was finding myself wanting to get up there and push them aside and do the opening and closing because I really do enjoy it.
yeah,
So I found myself being more of a yeah more of a CEO, a manager than anything else, uh, and and that's fine. I 2 weeks ago, sorry, last week and then 2 weeks ago. So I've taken two depositions in the past, literally 14 days, and I love depositions. I mean, I really do love that kind of work where I'm across the seat from an adversary asking questions and planning that strategy. I really love it. As a kid, I loved chess. I love
yeah,
Risk. Those games. Um, I like a deposition. I really do enjoy trial, but
yeah.
there's not enough time in the day to do all that kind of stuff. So that's my next step. What do I do? Do I hire a manager
Hmm.
to manage the law firm? I don't have any partners. Is that an option too, where you add a partner who's the managing partner, and then I go and do more of the trial work? That's the constant um, thought process of what's the next version of Groth Law Firm.
Absolutely. I just want to pause here and hone in on this because this is one area that law firm owners struggle with hugely is the delegation,
Hmm.
trusting other people to handle the cases. And you've
Oh
been
yeah,
able to do that, which is incredible. Can you just talk a little bit about what you did that was successful there? I mean, there's a lot of fear, that people have in handing work off to other people. What made it successful for you?
yeah, yeah. I remember this is 22 years ago when I worked for a different firm. Um, and I remember this story. There was a very well-known attorney in Wisconsin who, before anything went out the door of his firm, and it was a bigger firm, it was a personal injury firm, but a bigger firm, he had to see everything.
Mm,
So every piece of paper, it had to look a certain way. Every demand, every settlement had to be a certain way, and that was just the extreme of micromanagement.
yeah,
Um, and I never wanted to do that. And I learned from my employer, my boss at the time, how to look past the extreme micromanagement and look towards your scorecard to kind of look at process. What's the process? So are there certain things you can look at to then trust but verify? So
mm,
I'm going to trust that my attorneys and the team are making the requests. Are they doing these things? And we can look at our dashboard to see, okay, if they've done performed these tasks, I have to trust that that file, that client's well taken care of. And that's how we have it set up with our scorecards and our, I guess I'll call them KPIs, that if
yeah.
you're tracking the right things for the right team members, everything will be okay. And they have to step back and then trust the process and understand that, from time to time we'll do a review of just random files to make sure that the process is working, and maybe somebody wasn't trained properly or they're putting the information in the wrong file, but that's why our scorecard review should really reveal whether there's a lack of training or a lack of ability by that team member.
Okay. And we're going over time, but this is really critical stuff. I want
Yeah.
to ask one more question on this. How were you, because you were really skilled as a trial lawyer, that was your initial success.
Hmm.
How did you take that skill and knowledge and translate that to others, and teach others? How were you able to do that part of it?
So um, I years ago, I was a college professor, just like a part-time kind of thing. Um,
Okay.
and I think as being a trial lawyer, you really are like a teacher. You're teaching, you're enabling the jury um, in as concise a fashion as possible to understand this person's life, what they went through, and what they should be awarded. What they should be given as compensation to get them back to where they should have been if the negligence never happened. So that's I I think good trial lawyers are really good teachers because we're able to empower somebody else and teach them, give them the tools. So that's um, I think one of my strong suits, hopefully it is that I'm able to sit down with people and help them understand what they need to know and how they can get from this point to that point. I always say with our attorneys and team is that you need to be a lifelong learner. So if you need to go to um, a conference that's in Atlanta or Texas or California or wherever to hone your skill, do it. And I'm going to encourage that you need to learn however you learn best. Maybe it's from watching jury trials and going down, spending a day and watching somebody else try a case, or it's from a conversation with me. But it's allowing others to learn on their own time and being available for people so they can understand what I'm going through. Or what I've gone through to get here.
Yeah.
We have meetings every week on different files, and hopefully, people can learn from how I analyze cases. That
Hmm.
they'll learn, okay, maybe this is how I should analyze a case, and I can strategize and make sure we're getting enough compensation for our clients. So having those meetings on a regular basis, I think is really important so people understand it's it's a every day, every week, every month process of practicing law. It's not the perfection of law; it's the practice of law.
I love it. So, right now, someone is listening to this who's been struggling with this. I know there's so many law firm owners who are in this boat, right? You have high value cases or high value clients, and you feel like, well, when I hand them off, they don't get done properly. Jon has figured it out. He's taught his people, he's encouraged them to be lifelong learners, and you can do it too. And my
You
last
can.
question, Jon, is I think that's it, but maybe there's more, is simply for people who are listening, is there one last piece of advice or something you would give our law firm owners listening about scaling and growing? One more piece of advice that you have on that that you want to
Do it
leave our
now.
listeners with. Do it now. Okay, I
Do
love
it
it.
now. You don't wait. I mean, when my wife and I uh, had a long conversation, we walk our dogs every night. We had a conversation the other day about this, that uh, what would our life be like if we didn't make the jump to Groth Law Firm 14 years ago? We'd be comfortable, we'd be fine, but it would be vastly different.
Yeah.
And if we would have done it earlier, how much more um, different would it be? Would it have been better? Probably. I I have to think um, that the earlier we would have trusted in our own abilities and made the
Hmm.
jump, the better we would have been. And it's, gosh, when you're comfortable working for somebody and it's a full-time job and you have no risk, that's great, and that's
Yeah.
fine. And that's not, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone, but making that leap. And in my case, there's a backstory that I had other people help me make that leap. Just kind of
Hmm.
catalysts. Um, and when I made that leap, it was tough, very, very tough for a number of years. But now looking back, I wish I would have done it earlier. So just do it,
Love
like
it.
Nike. Just do
Yeah.
it.
Take the leap. Time waits for
Yep.
no one. Well,
Yes.
Jon, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, and you've had some great stuff to share with our audience. If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, where should they go?
Boy, the easiest thing is growthlawfirm.com, Groth lawfirm.com. We're on TikTok, Instagram, all that. Growth Gets It is our podcast. just reach out. I'll be happy to help out in any way I can.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, Jon.
Okay, thank you.
Jon, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing how you've used EOS to grow your firm and delegate trial skills to your team. For more information, check the show notes for Jon's contact details. The key takeaway here is that delegation combined with a structured system like EOS are the secret ingredients to scaling your law practice. You don't have to do it all yourself. Build the right framework, and your team can help drive growth. I've seen it firsthand. If you're a law firm owner looking for support and new strategies for growing your business, join our community of like-minded law firm owners from across the country, law firm owners who are on the fast track. It's a space where you can share ideas, learn from others, and get the guidance you need to take your practice to the next level. For just $97 a month, you can join the Lawyer Millionaire community and gain access to our monthly events, exclusive members-only content, and access our budgeting and financial planning tools. This has been the Lawyer Millionaire podcast. I'm your host, Darren Wurz, here to help you expand your business, maximize your profits, and grow your wealth. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.